I'll let you present the item ahead in front of us.
I believe you have the briefing sheet for today's briefing. What we're looking for, again, and this is, we've been back here multiple years and we've talked about this issue, both on behalf of the sheriff as an elected official, but as the other elected officials in the county, because we believe that leadership needs to be recognized for what they are, the leaders of their organizations who guide, direct, manage, influence, and carry out the mission of the people. As part of a representative public, they were elected there. I think it's the duty of the board to also take a look at the compensation as fair and equitable for their relative authority, accountability, responsibility. And so we come once again to try and seek a remedy for at least the sheriff's pay, but he has reminded me strongly that this is about the other elected officials who are in the same issue. What we've asked for is a revisit of the resolution that would add the sheriff as a function 102% of the undersheriff pay, which would put him 2% above me in the organization. The rationale is, as the PDRs that we've been researching over the past, public disclosure requests, that we have been researching and gathering information on has shown, and you've acknowledged there's gaps in the elected officials' pay. These gaps have gone back at least back to 2005, 2006 without remedy. And I'm talking not COLAs, I'm talking salary adjustments, the salary pay.
There was a salary adjustment last year.
Salary realignments based on comparables, based on relative responsibility and authority of Basin County elected officials with regards to the comparables that the unions use for wage realignments and contract negotiations. There's been no realignment issue on those elected officials. And that's why we're asking reconsideration of the resolution to align that. The funding that we would take to cover this is under your budget instructions, wages for wages, operations for operations, never should the two meet without approval. And we're taking the spirit of that and saying command pay for command pay. In light of Chief Haugen's retirement and us moving forward to try and fill that position, we're waiting for the remap to be done, which is a law enforcement management administration progress done by WASPEC to come in and review our jail practices. We are going to go out and he will be making an appointment in the future, but in the meantime, he'll have multiple months of unused wages and benefits, which could cover the 2016 realignment in the spirit of that resolution. Of course, we'd have to go in our 2017 budget and make adjustments to that to make it long-term and sustainable. But we believe that if you look at the relative authority, accountability, responsibility on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis, weekends, holidays, it's got the largest group of employees, the largest budget, that a realignment is not a deep ask. It's something that we believe should have been done. The PDRs, and I've only been through half of them, and the nature and the requests were to determine, collect data, to understand that what we're asking for is fair and valid, that it's born out of historical data, it's born out of past hearings, and it's born out of the appearance that I believe in talking with elected officials and the sheriff and being here for as long as I have now, watching department heads and the county commissioners apply a certain set of circumstances to their people and not affording that same luxury to the elected officials. And I will acknowledge that this board has made some steps in the line wages, the mid-level management non-rep wages, command wages. The last rung is the electeds, and they lead the organizations. They're the ones that are ultimately responsible. The sheriff, he gets named in every lawsuit. He has to deal with these things, irregardless of whether he was there or not. The liability that the sheriff incurs on a regular basis, whether it's the jail operations, patrol operations, use of force operations, He alone deals with those issues, and he's dealt with them for coming on 11 years now. You know, he's 10 and a half years into this. So he's one of, other than perhaps the auditor, Karen Herr, and Lisa Frazier, one of the longest elected officials who have been in this situation without any kind of realignment. So that's where we're at. The public disclosure, we're still going through it, and it was all about collecting data to show that what we were asking for was not out of line. That what appeared to us as a capricious and arbitrary applications and rules to one set of employees was not the same that was enjoyed by others. And that's what we were trying to demonstrate. It wasn't seen as a means to waste people's time to be useless. It's about collecting data. So when we came in here to brief, that we could show a well-documented, long history of what appeared to be a non-uniform application for wages and benefits.
So I didn't see that in any of the documentation that I was.
That's because we are still waiting for much of that documentation to still make its way back up to the various agencies reporting it. But I will be able to collate. I've got Chief Albert in her evenings on her own time searching through piles of data. I'm searching through piles of data because what we got were not exactly what we asked for. We got spam dumps. We've got junk that we have to sort through. So
Could it be due to the fact that the request was very, very generic and not very specific?
I will refer to Chief Shepherd on that.
The IT department gave me hundreds, I say me, I look up there were hundreds of spams, including Viagra. So, when you, and I'm sure that's because it was a realignment or, you know, upping the pay. But very, very Exactly.
I'm sorry, that took me.
Sergeant Brackets were
However, I mean, there were hundreds of spams, and that was from the IT department who knows better. Other, you know, when you're doing a search and it comes up with a group, when I'm doing a search for a request, for everyone, does this fit or doesn't it? And obviously, hundreds and hundreds of spams don't fit, including Viagra.
And Chief Shepherd goes through a lot of public disclosures. I mean, she's been here a long time.
I doubt IT did that to you on purpose. I do know that the request was so very, very broad that it said anything notes, and it covered everything that could possibly
Right,
cover.
but there is a
No, I
level
agree
of
with,
integrity that was missing.
I don't think that they probably, because it's so huge of a request, and I can't answer for them because I haven't asked them. I had never heard about this, but I don't think they did it on purpose, but they probably went by the request or whatever it was. I don't think they looked at them. I think
And
they
that's
just,
the problem.
I just think they said.
Somebody should have looked at
There
it.
should have been a review of what they were producing.
That's what we do in our department.
Yeah, well, I appreciate
Review
that.
everything
Like
before
I
it
said,
goes
so
out.
far, I think this cost $80,000. I'm sure it's a lot of people reviewing a lot of things, but it's a huge request.
Yeah, and I don't know how it's cost $80,000 because we do public disclosure requests all the time and we are not charging anybody. It's a function of the job and the position,
Yep.
and we sit here and plow through it in the evenings.
We're calculating the staff time spent in the number of staff.
So if that would be the
So
case.
just one example would be one woman. One of our staff members spent an entire day making copies, an entire 8-hour day making copies for this request.
But if it's okay, just give us the stuff. We'll continue to supply whatever you're asking for. Apologies for any of this other, because I don't know how that would happen, or I'll ask them.
Therein lies the problem in how long this is taking to go through those PDRs, because we are getting them and the things we're looking for weren't screened out, and the relevant information, the pay realignments, the salary issues, we're just getting dumps and dumps. And we are now having to go through and vet
That is
through.
what your request has for.
No, we didn't ask for anything about Viagra.
Again, your request was very, very broad. I do know that, and I'm not speaking for them because Bill's not here or nothing, but I do know that at one point they did call and ask for you to specify it down.
All that being said, all the PDR thus far has shown that what we believe as elected officials, and my part on behalf of the elected officials and the sheriff I serve, is that it has been an arbitrary and capricious application of how alignments are done. And elected officials have been ignored for at least a decade, and they can go back farther. And the same arguments that have been used over the past 2 years during this, by this board, by previous boards, the same arguments that were being used 15 years ago. all the reasons why they couldn't do something. We have documentation showing why they couldn't do anything. And what we're saying is, in light of the first initial, we have to take care of the rank and file. Okay, that was dealt with. Contracts were dealt with. We're in negotiations currently with one of the labor unions, and we're trying to get through that. Then it was, we have to take care of the mid-level managers and department heads. An exceptional window was created for those arguments, and those things were made. Okay, I get that. Now the elected officials sit before us, and if the ability was pay, or the ability to pay, then we've been throwing a lot of supplementals around out there and doing a lot of things. There was some money, if this was an important issue, on behalf of the elected officials to recognize their authority, their leadership, their longevity serving citizens, there was an ability to make those adjustments and be done with this issue. Okay, if it's about whether or not this was arbitrary or capricious, I think we can show that the elected officials have been long overdue for this issue. There was direction given by the board a while back when Director Kane was here to look into a salary commission. That's been battered around for the longest time. Still had nothing. If there are strategies and policies geared for the recognition of elected officials, I don't believe anybody in the elected official positions are aware of what those are. I may be mistaken, but I know, at least speaking for the sheriff, he's not aware of any policy strategies to deal with this issue. If it's about, we're worried about citizens on a salary survey committing the county to something, then we don't have a lot of trust in our citizens to look at the data, research the information, and make a sound decision based on that analysis of data. These are the people that entrusted us by voting them into office. Why wouldn't they be entrusted to actually look at proper alignments? And I've got a whole slew of other things, and I see we're running very short on time. But the issue is, I'm here, we will bring back any more data, but all that data, I believe, is just going to delay the decision-making even further. I believe in talking with some of the elected officials, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but in researching each of the offices and the pay disparities that are in existence between them and their peers in comparable counties. In some cases, the elected officials have the ability to deal with that issue if the board approves that alignment. In other cases, the board obviously would have to do supplementals to make up for that issue. In this particular case, we have an opportunity, and it just happened through a retirement, that we now have command pay that can go towards command pay for the realignment. So there will be no supplemental appropriation this year. I understand the issue of going forward, the issues that that will create. That's a budgeting strategy that we have to deal with on the 2017 budget. So I will keep it simple that our decision, to come over here and brief again on behalf of our elected official is we want to remove the personal animosity and go back to professional responsibility, which is to look at the situation and address it properly and deliberately in keeping with what we ask our leaders to do. Every organization has a leader, and that leader is responsible for everything. To have those people at the middle of the pack or well below people that they supervise and oversee, the boat's upside down. It's not the way organizations run. You name another organization where that's the case.
Commissioners.
Well, yeah, okay, I'm glad you brought that up. A couple years ago, when our elected officials were at the very, very bottom of all of the electeds, the Mason County Commissioners were at the very, very top.
You'll note that our realignments did put our
Yeah.
directors over our
Yes,
salaries.
I
That
acknowledge
hasn't
that.
been an issue among the commissions, so you asked me to name one. and I named
And that's fair. No, I acknowledge that, the pay, the suspension of your increases did bring that equity back. But that doesn't address people who've been in office for their third term now, climbing up.
Yeah, no, but one part does, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you're saying that nothing's happened. I don't know in the past, I do know since we've been here, one of the first things that we did as a commission when we were working with the budget was to connect the elected officials with the non-represented. So when we gave them raises, the elected officials got the exact same raises. To the point to where this last time, where we're looking at 4%, basically across the board. They got those raises. So it wasn't like they were just left out Now, before that, in the research I did, I do see that did happen. And it was a total freeze, I understand that. But I just know that since we've been here, it has not been a total freeze.
During that, Commissioner Rivett,
But for us, again, we're not complaining about our salary. That's not it. I'm just making a comment. It's 1%, compared to, example, 4% this year. For the commission gets 1%. But I want to point out something else. We all know what we were receiving when we ran for office. There's no way around that. And we're only in these offices for a blanket amount of time. But one other thing, I'm okay with if we can ever get to a commission. I've been saying that since day one. But the thing is, somehow we have to convince others to do that. At this point, I'm still okay with looking at that. But as for connecting this to the wage, to the salary of yourself and others, Commissioner Sheldon is not here today, which, this is a very important issue. He made something very clear when we realigned your salary. He made it very clear that he thought it was wrong for us to realign your salaries in connection to the union. For one reason, because you guys have some workings with the negotiations. Now, the sheriff, the actual elected official, that's a huge difference.
and then let me correct that assumption, that wrong assumption. When it goes to wages and benefits, we are not negotiating wages and benefits. We sit at the table. That was the purview of the budget manager and the support services director. All we did was sat there and listen to what was being bantered, but we didn't actively engage in that, realizing the conflict that would occur, that if we're in there strongly advocating for wages and benefits, we receive that. So we step away. We deal with management rights issues and operational issues related to the contract. But all we do is sit and listen to what is being dealt with on the wages and benefits as a function of planning for the next year's budget.
I'm not in that room, so I can't.
But I want to make sure
I won't challenge that because I'm not in the room.
I want to make sure that that's clear on the record, because that concern's been brought up multiple times, and I've talked with that with the deputy prosecutor on that issue. Going back to the realignment issues and then the freezes, I would agree that you've had elected officials who've been here for 12 years, and you're right. People can actually run for office knowing what the wages and benefits will be of that office. But I think for these elected officials, in 2007, nobody saw the 2008 recession hitting them. And these people have governed through that entire time. Some of these people have had to govern through the worst of the worst economies, maintain their offices, continue to try to move forward. They've been asked to carry extra and additional workloads through realignments that the board had to deal with and make cuts. And now that we find ourselves slowly coming out of this issue, and when other leaders and personnel are being recognized, and when other programs are being rebuilt and new employees are being hired by departments and other things, that once again, they're standing there watching everything pass them by, and we're using the same worn-out excuses for not doing something that is proper with regard to electeds. And yes, there was an across-the-board COLA and increase. I'm not going to dispute that. And I didn't say nothing was done. I'm specifically targeting salary realignments, bringing that baseline back to where it should be, and then going forward with the COLAs and adjustments. But they got left out for a long time.
I understand that. There's a big difference though. When I came in, the sheriff was making 83 and change. Now he's making about 90. That's quite an increase over a few years. It's not an alignment to 120. I agree. But to get there,
and that alignment is not 100 to 120. So
you're talking about 30,000.
It's still less than your department heads are making. A couple of your department directors are making more than the sheriff. And please skin for me how the responsibility, authority, accountability, and liability, why is that? Other counties have recognized this, that it was based on authority, accountability, responsibility, and liability for the realignments. Other counties have recognized that and made the proper adjustments based on the job. Okay, and you recognized it with your department heads and directors, that in order to attract, retain, and have an expectation, you did those proper alignments. My question is, why not the same for the elected officials at this time?
And so I did in my response to the sheriff, explain my position. You're saying it's the same old excuses. Let me say it one more time. I don't see it changing. I apologize to whoever is offended by this. My belief that an elected official is a public servant, somebody who decided they were going to take their experience, knowledge, and put it towards an elected form of government and representing the citizenry in whatever field they were doing. It is not for the pay, my hope. To compare an elected official's salary and duties to one where you need to recruit and retain in your management, your directors that are appointed, and those people under your directors for succession is not the same as taking on the role as a public servant. We do need to maintain a good, strong management staff, which is why we've spent a tremendous amount of effort trying to get some sort of policy and some sort of realignment among the people that, for the elected officials who wanted to have their staff be promoted in acknowledgement of new duties. But I don't believe, and I never will believe, that one should take non-elected staff directorships and all the theories around how you align that and recruit and retain that with an elected official. And that is just my theory, and I won't change it. You say use the same old excuses, well, that just won't change, so you can come back. Secondly, on the salary commission, yes, this will be the same old excuse. A salary commission does not have the duty of determining ability to pay. They can make recommendations on salary levels all the way to 120, 130, 150 to King County levels. But they won't have the responsibility to find the funds. And so that's why I don't agree that a salary commission should be.
But with that being said, the same electorate and representative public that you cite, and I apologize, I only got this letter this morning because it was sent out Friday. The only
Which
way.
Friday? What letter are you referring to?
Your response to the sheriff,
That's the
so
date on that
I wasn't, yeah. And so what I'm saying is I did not get this until.
And I also wanted to note that in your briefing document, you said that in your letters to the Board of Commissioners, those were sent directly to me, and it wasn't to the Board of Commissioners, so I did not take the effort to copy those to the Board of Commissioners until I made a response. So if there was an assumption that I was to have copied those letters to the full board, I would have preferred that it be addressed to the full
No,
board.
there were no assumptions there. Again, with regards to the salary commission, and I have briefing minutes from Commissioners Neville and recommendation that a salary commission be considered. The very people that you say have enough smarts to elect us into positions to lead, manage, guide, and direct and influence operations within the elected departments. The very people who spend an entire career working to become subject matter experts in the case of Karen Herb and our auditor and our sheriff, who spend an entire profession, their entire lives, gaining the knowledge, the subject matter expertise, to lead, guide. You're all saying because they're elected that they're not, shouldn't be compensated for an entire career of leadership?
I'm saying that when you choose to run for election and you know what the salary is, it's just like applying for a job and knowing what the pay is. The assumption that I should lobby for more money after I've been elected and or selected, I find offensive to some extent.
And we find offensive, I think equally, and across the board in my discussions with electeds, that we have to come in and lobby, that there's not enough recognition that the work they've performed over decades of service, the knowledge they've gained, the time and effort that they've put back into this county, they bit the bullet during the recession. And they understood that. But to continue to use that argument for not fair compensation like other counties recognize their leaders, that's wrong. We shouldn't have to come in and lobby that. And I believe that's where a citizens group, the salary commission, if they can be trusted enough to vote people into office, they should be trusted enough to look at the data, make the analyzation, and give a fair recommendation of
We're
what
not
is
gonna
proper.
agree here, so we can do this all day.
I just want to clarify, we both know that I am in favor of the salary
We've
commission,
got documentation.
but I think the argument they're using is still incorrect on that, because we are a representative form of government. This is not a straight democracy. We are elected to do this job. So saying that we can't trust them, that, I don't think that's a fair assumption.
But that's
Because
I
what it
didn't
comes
say
out
that
to.
either. I said we did not have to look at it
Yeah.
within the context of the ability to pay, which is what a board of commissioners must do.
And I want to explain that although that we disagree on this issue, I agree with her on that. They're not responsible for knowing that that we can pay for it or what to do about it.
Well-
I think that that's overcomable, but that's a different discussion, because I do think that at some point, we do make hard decisions, and I don't think this will be one of the hardest, but I'll tell you, I definitely agree with the idea of, I know what I was getting when I ran. There was no confusion there. Before the sheriff asked for this, it wasn't even quite a year after he ran, but there's other electeds as well. It's not their whole careers. They make a decision, just like myself now.
Well, I know that
This next
the
phase.
elected groups that we're talking about essentially grew up in their offices. And they spent an entire career in their offices. And I think that's where the issue is. And
Well, I do
We can-
need
we
to-
can-
we are
we
10
can do-
minutes behind, and so we need to wrap this up. And so the request from the sheriff through his undersheriff is whether or not we would put this resolution onto the council for consideration.
That resolution, no.
And I would not approve
And
that.
once again,
But-
okay, if not that resolution, then what strategies, policies, where do we go from here? Because if I walk away from the table, we're right back to square one with absolutely no idea, direction,
Let me
strategy.
ask something, if you don't mind. Commissioner, up to this point, we haven't had a full discussion, a briefing on a salary commission, just a briefing to find out the different, because I know you've done a lot of research and you found a lot of pitfalls, and I don't disagree with you, because you're a very smart person, so I trust what you see too. But it would be nice if we could have a full briefing on a salary commission, and then, hear both sides of this, because I've seen some good benefits. I do see there's some scary aspects, but maybe that's what will come out of this.
I'm not saying I would change my position on the salary
No, I'm
commission, but
not expecting you to.
I'm welcoming discussion. I don't want there to be an assumption of any kind based on that briefing,
But you will,
because it feels like people take that and move it a little further than.
What I would say in my final shot, thank you for allowing us once again to try and explain the position. I find myself after 10.5 years perplexed by this issue and the unwillingness to set a group of people in place with a set of data. But I would hope that you actually look at your 6 elected officials who were affected by this and make a diligent decision on what needs to be done. Because I can guarantee you right here, right now, that every single person in the sheriff's office who has either spent 20-plus years here or fairly new here, none of them will run for sheriff.
well, this is
There's not, so you lose your corporate knowledge, your corporate expertise, your corporate, and you bring in a new person every time. I'm just saying, it is a pitfall of our profession. I don't know how it is with the other elected offices, but in law enforcement, subject matter expertise, skills in those areas, they matter. And so,
But I'm sure I'm going to clarify, I do care about, and so does Commissioner Jeffries, I'm not speaking for you, I apologize. We do care about the elected officials, and we've gone through quite some big battles to get the raises that we've done. As you've heard even in this budget, this last budget briefing, to even include the raises that we're trying to put in now with for our non-represented and our electeds is a point of contention.
no, I know it is.
Yeah.
It's been a contention for a lot of
Yeah,
years.
it's a
I
hard
get
thing,
it.
but each year we found a way to get past that contention and make something different happen. Is it enough? I'm sure it's not. But, it's one thing also, no, it never is.
Well, I would
Especially
only,
in Mason County, where
I'd
it's
only
like-
encourage this commission that you incorporate into your budget instructions how you plan on dealing with your elected officials, so those things can be dealt with in the budget. To delay it again into next year, will be
I
another
understand
program.
why you're calling it a delay. To me, it's a decision. The decision has been made.
Okay, well
If
then,
we need to do it up here, I will. But quit calling it a delay and acting like it's an iterative thing that could potentially change in my position. Just know that I am a no.
that's fine. Then I'll talk with the other two
Well,
commissioners.
and we've given raises, so it makes it sound like we haven't done anything.
And
This commission has.
parsing of the words, salary realignments to establish a
Salary
baseline
realignment, I
versus COLA adjustments
Has
are
not
two
happened.
different
You're
issues.
correct.
Okay, that's where I want to say, that's where what we're trying to get over, that issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is there meeting